4, welcome to the library, and this final look at the state we find each of our heroes and their allies in as we near the end of Series 3 of Intro to the Realms and the Tales Told Within. Perceptive patrons, regular visitors, and new guests of the library, I am the recorder, and I do hope you enjoy the following Series 3 roundup. Stay tuned to the end for a peek into where we are going from here. Starting first with the situation at Farmhold, which has seen Sergeant Han drawn into this situation by the request of a former student, Scry Arst. We find that Han did indeed make it long before dawn, and with plenty of time to consult and coordinate with the heads of the various groups within Farmhold. He had received information during his return from the Brothers Caliber, who were busying themselves infiltrating Deep Block and seeking to gain a better sense of their situation. This information was the center of the most of the discussion and the arguments taking place, as Han tried to impress the severity of the situation on the assembled leaders. Deep Block has built up an incredible amount of arms and material for their war on Farmhold. By best estimate, they have the reserves to outfit and maintain a force well over 100,000. They have nearly twice that in foodstuff and other logistical resources.
What would you suggest then? We just run from our homes?
One of the attending leaders inquired. You need to understand that at those numbers, while the defensive setup here is impressive, it will not be likely to be able to be held without significant civilian casualties. Farmhold is a massive area, and even relocating systems and power from sectors that are not under attack will not be enough to guarantee civilian safety. The room was quiet. The only blessing we have right now is Deep Block is still in the building up stages, and thus very unlikely to attempt to mount an assault before spring. The frosts are coming in, and the freezing frogs are more likely to present more problems to them and their heavier assets than waiting will. But they will come.
Again, I ask, what do you suggest? Can we not just use that time to further build up our systems?
Simply, no. There is only so much that we can manage to build and install in the time we have. Even if we shifted priorities around, there is not enough time for what would be required. Likewise, the underground shelter system won't be ready either, so I would humbly suggest that the civilian population be evacuated over the coming months. Nomad's Forge has more than enough room, and will willingly open her doors to our ally of Farmhold in their time of need. Again, the table burst into a chorus of questions mixed with angry accusations, with some thinking this was a power play by Han, and others questioning how they could even do such a thing. Nomad's Forge was far out in the cluster, and it had no cog gate. Han merely assured them it could be done, without putting their civilians at risk. All the voices in the room stopped, as one addressed Han from above. Professor Han, is this truly your honest assessment of the situation? And what of your assessment, Professor Kanar? All of the heads turned as one to look up at the second floor landing, and the smiling form of Cathian, leaning heavily on the railing, looking back down upon them. He was wearing his aura-bound armor, and for many, this was the first time they had ever seen it. And, like now, when the extra limbs were not deployed, it appeared as a very fine suit of light parade plate, ceremonial. With the light of the dawn now streaming through a window and illuminating him and him alone, it truly looked like a scene from one of the great plays of the elves. For a long moment, no one spoke, until Cathian again spoke. Professors, time is of the essence, is it not? Smiling, both confirmed the reality of the situation, and for the need to evacuate the civilians. For the time of the actual battle, at the very least. Furthermore, Gnar stated he could make arrangements for the process to only take a week at best. This would allow plenty of time for the full city to tend to the tasks that were needing to be done if Farmhold was to be held against this onslaught. Less than 10 minutes later, almost all had filed out, with plans and orders in hand, bolstered with the knowledge that their lord was indeed alive, up, and about, and more important, leading them again. Only Cathian, Han, Gnar, Lassen, and Justique remained to discuss the details of the matters. As Cathian made his way down, it was clear that his limbs had not returned, and he was using the armor to more or less carry his torso and manipulate things, while keeping the appearance of being whole. After taking a seat, Cathian spoke again, seemingly winded by the effort of coming down the stairs. It will take some time to get used to this. He gestured at himself. But, for the time being, Professor Gnar, we need that evacuation route. And Professor Han, or more appropriately, Sovereign Han, I will need a significant increase in the raw materials being sent from Nomad's Forge. Han raised an eyebrow. Cathian, your facilities are already working at well above capacity. What would you need more resources for? Cathian leaned back and tapped a sigil on his armor's shoulder, the star and tool symbol of his family line. My parents chose to build a life here for a reason, Professor Han. The merchant said that you would understand something about flameworks. A thin smile on Cathian's face was all the further clue that Han was going to have to go from. And for a long moment Han seemed confused, until a sly grin of his own began to form. If you mean what I think you mean. The grin now a warm smile, to the confusion of everyone else in the room. You shall have your materials, and more. From the home world of Jam'mar, where Farmhold sits, across several light years of space, we find Nomad's Forge, the factory system, complete with its own star metal making Star Forge. Han's absence in no way slowed the works or efforts of his unit towards the full restoration of the various systems and components of this ancient and potent logistical asset. By the time Han sent orders and specifications for material and more advanced produced goods, they were able to provide all the requested items with ease. However, not all was well on the Forge Ring, that being the name given to the massive station that acted as both gate into and from, as well as the master controller for the system itself. while the functions of the station had been restored in all but a very few sectors. Those sectors required a hands-on approach. Normally, this was because of the lack of any skill on the part that it had tried to strip and gut the station for anything of value. However, in some cases, such as the one that Mazanoa and Nada were dealing with, something far darker was at play. They were standing outside a storage center, with Nada working the console next to the door. They'd been here for an hour already, and Nada's curses didn't indicate he'd be able to override the seals anytime soon. Mazzy was about to start teasing the dwarf again about Han could have had it open in 5 minutes, when a message from Han was actually relayed to her by Navi. Letting light flash and pulse in her eyes as she went over the vast trove of encoded data, Nada was a forgotten thing for the moment, and Mazzy was left with both very clear orders and no idea on what was going on. The sound of the outer door slamming open, followed by the inner door, brought Mazzy back to the situation at hand. Sending the new decoded orders on to Navi to distribute to the unit, Mazzy walked in after Nada to see what was being held here, as there was no record of this storage room even existing, nor what it might contain. Catching up and seeing Nada staring into an open crate with a look of shock, no, horror, on his aged and worn dwarven face, Mazzy didn't even have a chance to ask before she lost her voice in her throat at the presumptive reply to her presence.
A divinity cannon. It's a goddamn divinity cannon.
Looking about in the dimly lit, vast storage room, Mazzy saw shelf upon shelf, row upon row, each filled with crates such as the one Nada was now looking in. All she could do was gawk, as best counts put the total number of divinity cannons in the realms in the low 3-digit range at best. Well, until now, she guessed.
Yeah, thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. This must be where they were mass-produced before the Wars of Feather and Scale. And since the gods never got involved with that particular shit show, they stayed hidden here until they were going to be needed, if ever.
Nada closed and resealed the crate, a light immediately surrounding it and lifting it back to its proper place.
With the end of the wars and the rain, only a scant few would have been sent out of this place before it was forgotten and left to ruin. Thank the gods the pirates never found their way in here. Or, should I say, the gods better thank us.
A deep chuckle followed for some time as they made their way back to the command center, Nada apparently amused by some private joke. Mazzy was already busy ensuring that the secret they had just uncovered would stay secret, at least until Sarge got back and decided what to do. As they walked out the door, Nada quickly reversed the actions on the console, and again the doors sealed with a heavy clang. Nada finished by sealing off the only 2 points of access that led to the area.
Mazzy, you get to tell the boss about this, and make sure...
He stopped, seeing that look in Mazzy's eye. She knew what her job was, and already was on it.
When I read your files, I must say I thought they had been, let's say, embellished. If anything, you all have been sandbagging.
To which Mazzy only smiled. moving swiftly on from Nomad's Forge and its goings-on to that of Optor and his friends, Unka and Lasara. Having just escaped the Intani world along with the entirety of the civilian population of Jamlos, who only numbered in the few hundreds, Optor and his allies had acceded to the request of the Jamlos to be trained as crew of the very ship that bore them to freedom. The last few days had seen most of the Jamlos, the name self-proclaimed by the crew, rapidly take to their new tasks and duties. After all, these were not savages, and required very little in the way of conceptual training, mostly just needing to be informed of the practical matters and facts of their duties. As for Optor and the vessel itself, for which he had still not come up with a name, they were now well known to each other, for he had walked every step inside and out, and found the ship to simply be too good. Aggressor spines were a more and more common addition to shell-style ships, generally for more defensive power and emergency punch. However, before finding this vessel, as far as Optor knew, the most that could be made to function properly was 3 aggressor spines on any one hull. Any more than that and they began to interfere with each other and the vessel itself uncontrollably, an issue that had been well known for years at this point. In fact, the 3rd spine was generally reserved for only the wealthiest ship owners, who could afford the needed experts to make the 3 systems work properly. Those ships with only 1 or 2 never suffered any such issues. But this ship had 4, and was experiencing no interference or loss of effectiveness. Quite the opposite, in fact. Optor was sure that he knew why, but every time he searched his vast mind, he could not find either the reasoning or the evidence for this certainty. However it worked, it did work, and with 4 such spines and spires, his ship would easily be a match for anything in its general class, if not a couple above it. The spires and vessel were beyond advanced, optimized and mastercrafted, and Optor felt the subtle hand of Praetor engineering in every step on the decks, heard it in the near silence of the lifts moving up and down the Central's core. He wouldn't be shocked that some of his people had become shipwrights and damn good ones, but that did not explain how this ship landed over 10 millennia ago on that world. That was the puzzle that worried him, for it meant that either he was meant to find it, or he had just been unfathomably fortunate. Both were horrifying in their own ways, but the first was the bulk of his concern. There were many forces that could cross the seas of time, and not all of them were friendly. He had feared when he had been in the review board meeting that he had found something that was going to end up costing his life. Yet, it was less than a footnote once he spoke with his new boss, Ortis, at length. Ortis had made little of the ship's strange configuration, far more focused on ensuring Optor was now properly briefed on the nature of his first mission as a reliquarian. Optor was to take his ship to a star system that was not on the star charts, assess its status, and evacuate any civilians that wished it. It seemed a strange mission to assign as a shakedown run, but Optor didn't say anything, only asking what, if any, resistance he should expect. To which the answer was less than encouraging. The system is under a level 5 non-revocable quarantine. Means there will be a small drone ship fleet to repel any raiders or other that would try to do what you are about to. The image of orders gestured around the ship. Assuming you've only told me about half of what this ship can do, you should be more than fine. That fleet and the system have been active for over 500 years at least. With no resupply or update, you should have no issue getting to the main world of the system. Now, your priorities are the civilians and any hard data on the situation and its nature. If you have to engage with hostiles, attempt to leave nothing behind. We would prefer a small footprint on this one as possible. Optor just stared at his new boss for a moment. You just authorized me to wipe out a Class 5 quarantine fleet, and you want a small footprint? Ah, but that's the rub, Optor. Ordis smiled. According to the books and the records, neither the quarantine or the fleet exist. But, assuming the world isn't falling to pieces, it will eventually be examined. Best not to leave much, if anything, of you there for them to find. And this is where we leave the various heroes of our tales, their stories and adventures to be continued in Series 4 of Intro to the Realms. Speaking of Series 4, let's cover a bit what's to come between Series 3 end and Series 4's start. To put it plainly, once Entry 36 and the tales thus far for Series 3 have been released, I'm going to be going on a proper break after doing a year of entries. So, for a few weeks, perhaps maybe just over a month, content will be sparse, if not absent. I do hope you will excuse me this bit of self-care and self-indulgence, but from time to time even the most zealous and passionate of creators need to step back, if for no other reason than the betterment of the end product to come after. However, while I may not be releasing entries during this break, I will be in the process of enacting or initiating several projects that have been more or less on standby until I could make the time to focus on them properly. While I do not want to go in too deep a detail as to not oversell things or aim too high, the aim will be to have made noticeable steps up in the qualities of the entry to come, as well as your ability to interact with me, the library, to communicate your thoughts and ideas, your questions and queries. This last is of particular importance to me, as while the Realms of Jam'mar is but second nature to myself, I am aware that there is still so much that has not been covered or explained, or not explained well enough. Topics such as temporal mechanics of the realms, deeper dives into the various races and organizations of the realms. These are but a few areas that I am well aware of need firmer examination. The tales will continue, and when they do align with the lore topic, the two will be combined as has been tradition. But, with the exception of specific lore topics that I need to plan for, generally ones requiring their own establishment entries, I would be elated if those among my perceptive patrons and regular visitors would lend their aid to me in this matter. I truly do wish to allow not only the tales, but your interest and inquiry to guide how these entries progress, not only in Series 4, but as a general path forward for the library. In that endeavor, I would ask that if you are interested in helping to shape the future of entries to come, always be sure to leave a comment, both in the comment section of the entries and the community portion of the library. Every question asked, Each means the world to me because they help me see where I might need to go to ensure that I am properly relaying and explaining things. Of course, this is not just confined to the lore. If something is in a tale and it's not clear, please don't hesitate to ask for some clarity. One of the things that is in the works is for a more reliable method in which to allow my perceptive patrons to a direct way to help guide the shaping of the channel. Again, I don't want to set expectations too high, but after a year so far, I have no intention of stopping with the series. I just need to collect myself for what is coming next. It is possible that a new schedule for releases will be in effect with Series 4, but any changes will be made clear as possible before Series 4 begins. While there will be no more entries of any kind after the tales thus far for Series 3 until after my break, there is a very good chance that some kind of content, or more likely, updates on what we are doing, will be released. I hope you will follow along as we continue to explore the realms of Jam'mar and are enjoying what we are building towards. Thank you again for your understanding and patience as lessons continue to be learned and slow progress steadily achieved. As always, my perceptive patrons, regular visitors, and of course, new guests of the library, I have been the Recorder, and until you next return to the library for another entry of Intro to the Realms, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves, and each other. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.